Hi everyone, Mike from 7 Points CBD here with you today, and I'd like to talk in more detail about our lab certs, or our certificate of analysis that we get from our lab to test our product. There's a lot of noise in the industry right now. A lot of consumers want to see this information, and we think that's fantastic. We also want to make sure that people know what it is that they're really looking at. So we want to spend a little bit of time here today to help you understand those things. One of the most important things that you should be looking for on the lab certs is the fact that they've been verified by a third-party company. In our case, we work with Confident Cannabis. They're not even the lab that tests it. They've certified that lab, and then they host the lab certs for us, which means you can have confidence that we or no one else has monkeyed with these lab tests. They are 100% genuine and authentic. The next thing that you want to look at is the date of the lab cert. Just like any product, we do small batch product runs, and we want to make sure that those are fresh. And in the case of this, we're looking at our 1200 milligram tinctures that were run in early December, and these lab tests are dated December 12th of 2019. So at the time when we're making this, these things are about 6 weeks old. Super fresh product, and we have a lab cert that backs it up. Another thing that you want to look at is how much content is really in the lab cert. If you're seeing lab cert from a company that's only 1 page long and they're saying, hey, this is our purity test, it's very unlikely that that's the case. Most of the testing that's done on a 1 page is to verify the actual phytocannabinoid or cannabinoid content, like they're wanting to say how much CBD is in the product. In our case, we have 1 page about that, but we have additional pages to talk about purity. So there is a difference between potency and purity. Potency is going to be the cannabinoid content, and in our case, we label our product 1200 milligrams per bottle, and on this particular batch, we got a little over 1343 milligrams of CBD per bottle. So I really think we hit the mark and then some on that. So we've talked then about the potency, but purity is really the thing that we want to make sure we're hitting the mark on as well. That's where we're really protecting you, the consumer. It's great to have a ton of CBD in the bottle. Doesn't mean that much if the product isn't pure. So the other things that we test for are pesticides, and there's a good dozen or so pesticides that we're testing for. And well, how would those pesticides get there? Well, if the farmer used pesticides in the growing process, those would show up in the extract and they would show up in a test here. So this is a way that we can back up that our hemp is actually farmed and processed in an organic way. The next test is for residual solvents. We want to make sure that there's no hexane, pentane, isopropyl alcohol, or other nasty stuff that's left over from the process that's used to make this that ends up in the final product. And again, there's a host of a good dozen or so that are tested. There's something called the LOQ, that's the limit of quantification. You'll see that throughout the lab tests. And generally speaking, well, actually, all through this, you'll see that those are non-detectable levels, meaning that the sensitive equipment in the lab couldn't even pick up on any trace amounts of some of these nasty things. So good thing for everybody. The next thing that we test for is microbials, and some of the microbials we test for are things like yeast, mold, bacteria. We don't want any of that in the product. And then finally, we test for heavy metals. And the heavy metals that we test for are the common ones that are used in industry and could end up in the product if a machine was fouled or if it was a really bad extraction company that we were working with, which we're not. But we test for arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury. If you don't see a lab report that's covering all of this ground, you might want to ask yourself, is this company that I'm currently looking at, or maybe even you're buying from, are they really doing the best job possible to protect you, the consumer?